Our first speaker is Ilian Burbano, who is the chairperson for the Canadian Union of Public Employees, Ontario Section International Solidarity Committee. Welcome, Ilian Burbano.
Thank you, Fareed. Thank you to the organizers for inviting me to be part of and to speak at this very important gathering. I'm here, as Fareed said, on behalf of the Canadian Union of Public Employees International Solidarity Committee. So my words are not just personal words of solidarity, but words on behalf of my committee, which is part of a union, CUPE Ontario, which represents 250,000 workers across this province. And although we are all aware that the main focus of today's gathering is to denounce the grave repression and human rights violations endured by broad sectors of the Iranian population under the Islamic regime, I want to begin by acknowledging and commemorating the long history of resistance of you, the Iranian people, including the fact that many of you were actors of a momentous social revolution that shook not only Iran but the world in 1979. And we should never belittle that fact and that history, because one of the things that history has taught us is that a people who undergo a revolution have an accumulated reserve of knowledge and experience and struggle that cannot be repressed or contained indefinitely. And based on that, I am convinced, as many of you are convinced, that one day the Iranian people will be free. As CUPE activists, we support the ongoing struggle of broad and progressive sectors of the Iranian population for unconditional freedom of speech and thought, freedom to carry out protest, assembly, strike. We support, like you do, real equality between men and women in all spheres of public and private life in Iran, and a sustainable living standard, including adequate wages and protections for workers in Iran, and adequate social services and protections for Iranian society as a whole. We also are very aware that in Iran what is needed, like in many other places around the world, including here in Canada, are profound social changes in diverse areas of social and political life, and not only limited reforms, but will leave the parameters of the Islamic regime intact and only benefit certain factions of the ruling class in your country. We denounce the widespread criminalization and incarceration of protesters in Iran, the persecution of social and political activists, the widespread use of torture, sexual violence, including execution by the Islamic regime and its security forces against broad sectors of the Iranian population. Our union and myself, we also strongly support the development of autonomous workers' councils, committees, syndicates, and federations. In other words, a progressive and autonomous labor movement in Iran. Based on that, we also demand that all attacks against the independent labor movement in Iran stop immediately. We demand the release of the 5 members, board of directors of the Half Tafe Sugarcane Workers Union, the release of Mansour Onsalu and Ibrahim Madali, who are leaders of the Tehran Bus Company, Vahed Bus Company Union. We also demand the release of those labor activists who are still incarcerated after last year's May Day celebration. We strongly believe that under no regime, whether Islamic or secular, should assembling and celebrating International Workers' Day should not be dealt as a crime or an offense. Finally, I also want to say that as QP, we also oppose any intentions of imperialist forces to attack the Iranian people under the guise of helping the Iranian people, because history and current events around different parts of the world have taught us that powerful imperialist forces are not genuinely interested in the freedom or the equality or justice for Iranian people. Finally, I just want to thank you again for allowing me to be here. I want to express my solidarity on behalf of QP's International Solidarity Committee, and we hope to be able to hear again as you keep going in the diaspora, supporting progressive struggles for freedom, real democracy, real equality, and justice in all spheres for the people in Iran. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ilian, and Canadian Union of Public Employees for the ongoing support of people's struggles in Iran, and especially Ilian, who's always been a strong supporter of our movement all these years.
Thank you.
Thanks again.
See you soon.
Oh yeah, he has to go. Ilian also has to go. He's been here for a long time. Thanks again. Andy Buxton, he is representing Amnesty International. Andy Buxton to speak on behalf of Amnesty International. Thank you so much, Andy.
Thank you for inviting Amnesty International here tonight. Thank you all for being here tonight, and thank you for caring about human rights in Iran. Amnesty International speaks out about human rights issues all over the world, and I'm speaking on behalf of 2 million Amnesty International members all over the world. Now, traditionally, Amnesty International is concerned about issues like the death penalty, torture, arbitrary detentions, arrests, extrajudicial executions, and human rights violations of that sort. Sadly, those are the sorts of human rights violations that we see in Iran, and those are the sorts of human rights violations that we all need to speak up against in Iran and everywhere around the world. But particularly tonight, we need to speak up against those human rights violations in Iran. On December 10th, which is International Human Rights Day, Amnesty International issued a major research report addressing all of our concerns about human rights violations in Iran. I won't bore you by telling you about that report beyond saying that if you want to go and check it out on the web, check amnesty.ca and you'll read all about the repression, the torture, the killings, the detentions, the unfair trials, the executions. You'll read about 4,000 to 5,000 people arrested after the events in June. You'll read about 70 extrajudicial executions. You'll hear about, most recently, 2 men were executed in Iran and 9 more are on death row and face imminent execution. All of these are human rights violations. All of these, Amnesty International calls on the international community, not just the Iranian diaspora, but the entire international community to speak up against these human rights violations. Amnesty International issues something called urgent actions, and as the name suggests, those actions we issue are urgent because we foresee urgent and terrible cases of human rights violations that have just occurred or are about to occur. Sadly, since the 12th of June, Amnesty International has issued more urgent actions on Iran than on any other country in the world, and that's a terrible shame. If you want to take action, apart from attending vigils, being at protests, listening to speeches, I urge you to check out our website and consider joining the Urgent Action Network so that you will be joining 2 million people all over the world speaking out against these sorts of human rights abuses in Iran. Thank you once again for caring about human rights in Iran, and all the best for your event tonight. Thank you.